Hey guys, it's Allison. Welcome to my Instagram cooking channel. We're gonna call this Quarantine Cooking. I know you guys have been asking for these videos for a while and I really haven't had the time, but now there's no time better than the present since we're all kind of stuck at home. I want to show you guys how to cook using stuff that you kind of stocked up on in your pantry or your freezer or your fridge and really making the most out of the ingredients that you have at home so we don't have to keep running out to the supermarket. I figured if I'm gonna gain weight, and I'm gonna get fat just from eating and sitting at home, I might as well do it while sharing it with you and making some pretty good food. So tonight, you're gonna put down the box mac and cheese and I'm gonna show you how to make stuffed peppers. Literally a 6-ingredient meal. It'll take about an hour from start to finish, but once everything's prepped, pop it in the pot, your job is done. That's it, it's so easy. We're going to start off by using red bell peppers. You can use red, orange, or yellow. Do not use green. I think green bell peppers are a huge waste. I think they're disgusting. That's just my opinion, but I just think they're pretty useless. They're not sweet enough like a regular bell pepper and they're not spicy, so they really serve no purpose. So I would definitely use a red bell pepper for this. Pecorino Romano cheese, you can use Parmesan. If you don't want to use cheese, that's your loss. I don't know why. My family, we use Pecorino, but that's again, just a preference. Minute rice. This meal is also so cheap and budget friendly. This is not something that's going to break the bank. My mom taught me how to make this, and my grandma used to make this for her. This is like what they call like peasant food. It's stuff that's so basic and easy and stuff that everybody has that it's nothing in here is going to make you break the bank. And it's also most ingredients you guys have already. And if you have to grab a couple ingredients, it's the beef and the peppers. Everything else I know that everybody has. So some plain white minute rice. Normally my mom makes this with tomato sauce. I don't have tomato sauce, not a big deal. We're going to use tomato puree. Only difference is a little bit more concentrated, so we'll have to thin it out with some water. If you don't have any of this, I know that everybody has at least one jar of marinara sauce in the back of their pantry. You could use that for this too. It's really, this sauce is what the peppers are kind of gonna sit in while they cook, so it's really up to you. And I'm going to use I'm making a lot. I'm Italian and I don't know how to cook for the right amount of people. So I'm gonna make 8 stuffed peppers. It's about 1.5 pounds of ground beef, 80-20. You could use ground turkey, ground chicken, ground pork, ground veal, anything that you want. This is also, I feel like once you guys learn how to make stuffed peppers, you can customize it to whatever you like. If you like a Mexican themed stuffed pepper, use canned corn, canned black beans. You could use some ground spicy chorizo and some taco seasoning that I know everybody has in the back of their pantry. They don't want to admit it, but I know you have it. Throw that in there, some Monterey Jack cheese, would be delicious. It's really, this lays the basic cooking technique for you guys to make this your own. I'm going to use about a half, not even, this is kind of big, maybe about half of this yellow onion. And last but not least, some parsley. If you don't have parsley, don't freak out, you don't need it. If you have dried parsley, great. Just use, when you're using dried herbs, kind of the rule that we go by is you want to use about half of what you'd be using fresh. Dried herbs are more concentrated, obviously. So if you're using, let's say, a cup of fresh herbs, you want to use half of that in dried herbs, but I don't recommend anybody using that much because that's an absurd amount. So I think we should get started. It's super simple. Before I jumped on here, I already cooked off the minute rice and it literally took 5 minutes, and that's just sitting on the back of my stove. I did 2 cups of rice, and I think it's going to be more than what I'll need, but the good thing about this is that I can keep this in my fridge, put it in some bone broth or put it in some soup and eat it later. You can make fried rice. That's something that won't go bad that you can eat at a later date. First things first, I'm gonna put my hair up so I don't get hair in anybody's food. Last thing I need is my sister barking at me that there's a blonde hair in her food, and I can't blame anybody but myself. Hands are clean, everything is washed and ready to go. And I'm going to show you guys how to cut an onion because when I learned in culinary school, I realized that I've been doing it wrong this whole time. And when cutting an onion, there is like a root hairy end that we call it, and then there's the top. What you want to do is keep this root end intact. See, when I cut this in half, I kept the root intact. When this root end comes off, that's when you have a party of onion on your cutting board and you're kind of chasing it around with your knife. You want to cut the top off, keep the root end on. So that's what I did here. I cut the top off, kept the root on, and I peeled back the first I'll show you here. You just want to peel back the first layer of the onion skin because we don't need this, keeping this end intact. Also bear with me, I got a tripod, I don't know how to use it. I got a ring light, I don't know how to use it. I'm trying to be an influencer. I'm in my 30s and I have no clue how to do any of this stuff. So this is my first video, I'm gonna get better at it, but I need you guys to bear with me on this. So I'm gonna lower this down a little bit. Let me lower it a little bit more. Perfect. Everyone can see that. Dull knives are when you cut yourself. I've cut myself 8,000 times and I could literally cut myself every time I cook, and it's because my knife has been too dull. So first things first, when this was together, we cut it right down the middle. And when you're chopping things, what do we want to do? We don't obviously want to keep the round edge up because this is you're asking for it. Flat edge down. This is going to be a stable surface for you to cut that the onion's not going to be going anywhere. Everybody kind of does this a little bit differently. What I do first is you want to make either a claw, and what does this do? This helps prevent the knife from slipping off and cutting the top of your finger. This way it'll just nick your knuckle, which is better. Or you could do it palm side up, which I mean, this is better than this. This is just gonna be, you're asking for it again. So I'm gonna put this down and I'm going to cut about little slits up and down the onion. And you kind of want the knife to do most of the work. And I'm just gonna do a couple, being careful. And now you have slits going up this way. Now we need to make slits going this way. So again, root end is still intact. This is going to help you. You're going to make these slits about a half an inch apart from each other, but notice how my knife is not going all the way down to the root end. I'm keeping it about a half of an inch to the end, and this is going to help when you start to dice. All your pieces are going to be the same size. Now you notice that some came off. That's obviously going to happen. It is fine. Now you have all of your slits going up and all of your slits going around. You're going to make your claw again and just bring it downtown. Now look, you have all these pieces of onion that are almost exactly the same size, and this is the size that you're looking for. If you have a little piece that got away from you, chop it up, push it to the side for this. Now what we're going to do for the peppers, we want these peppers to sit in the bottom of the pot. So what we have to do is kind of level off the bottom of each pepper, but you don't want to go all the way through. So what I'm going to do is just take my knife gently and see how now it sits up. You just want it to cut off the little bump on the bottom of the pepper to make it sit flat. And now I'm going to take my knife and cut off, go around, and cut off the little hat on the pepper. Now, don't throw this out. We're gonna scoop the seeds and the ribs out, and then we're gonna put the top right back on to the pepper. Now, you guys do this. I'm gonna do this with the rest of mine, and I will be right back. I'm back. All of my peppers have been gutted, and their little hats have been put back on. My onion is chopped. So the next thing we have to do, and the last thing we have to chop, is our parsley. Obviously you want to wash all of your herbs when they come home from the supermarket or the farmer's market, and I think we're only gonna take about half of this. Put this back. And what I like to do, I think it's kind of the easiest way, is I hold all of the parsley by the stems, and then you take your knife and you just kind of run it across the leaves. And see how like the leaves are kind of separating from the stems and falling off? I like to say that this is kind of giving the parsley like a haircut. Now these are stems. Now you could save these stems for chicken soup, chicken broth, or these have a ton of flavor, so I definitely wouldn't throw these out. Now we come back here, and any of the big stems, you don't really want those for these. So I'm gonna pick up all the leaves, grab it all into like a big pile. And when you're grabbing it, you're kind of tucking it in like you're rolling, well, you all know what I'm thinking about, but I'm not gonna say it. Let's just say rolling a cigar, wink, wink. And you're gonna roll this all up, but kind of bring everything in together in a compact little area. See, now kind of the parsley's in one area, then it was kind of all over the board. And then you're gonna, again, use a claw. Don't ever have your fingers out. Tuck them in, and you're just gonna rock your knife back and forth and chop up the parsley. We'll go back and forth a few times. This is a rustic dish. Nothing has to be perfect. You just kind of want, you don't want to be biting into like a huge piece of parsley. And when you're rocking your knife back and forth, your fingers on the top of the knife and out of the way. This thumb can get tricky. Don't have it wiggling down here. Up and out of the way, and just rock your knife back and forth a couple more times. And you'll see that the parsley or whatever herb you're chopping is kind of perfect. Bench scraper, because I think it's one of the best kitchen tools I have. Great. Okay, we have our parsley chopped. Now all of our chopping is done. All of our prep work is done. That's it. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna bring you guys over to the stove and we're gonna saute our onion in a little bit of olive oil. And then once it's nice and caramelized, I'm gonna plop it into the bowl with my ground beef. So let's go over to the stove. I'm gonna plop this on about medium heat, and I'm gonna add a good glug of olive oil. And we're gonna let that warm up. And while we let that warm up, I'm going to open, we'll start off with 1 can. I have to do 2 pots because I'm making, I don't think all 8 peppers will fit in here. But I'm gonna open at least 1 can of the tomato puree while this warms up. Tomato can is on standby. I'm also gonna bring my bowl of meat and plop it up here and get my spoon, and then I can scoop the onions right from the pot into the bowl. And let's get a spatula to make this. Great. I'm gonna grab my bench scraper again. If you have like an island or something that's like close to, I recommend chopping and prepping your stuff as close to your stove and your oven as possible, just because you don't want to be walking around like the living room with chopped onions. It's just a lot easier. So this is gonna go into the hot oil. You wanna hear that sizzle. I'm gonna season these with some kosher salt. And let me get some black pepper. And I'm gonna do a little twist on my mom's recipe. I'm gonna add a little crushed red pepper, just a little bit. I just like a little bit of the heat. And we are going to move this around. You guys can see. We are just gonna cook these until they're slightly translucent and starting to caramelize. What we're gonna do is all of this flavor is going to go into our meat. And since this is such like a easy, there's really not a lot of ingredients, we really wanna get the most out of every ingredient. So sauteing these is gonna release all of their flavor. And it's really just gonna make the beef so much more fragrant. We'll let that sit for a little bit. Give these a quick stir. I'm gonna crank the heat up just a little bit. And you know what, while we're here, let's season our ground beef with salt and pepper again. I recommend kosher salt when doing this. I think iodized salt is what like my grandma uses, and she refuses to use anything else. Kosher salt, and liberally season. When I didn't know that I was under seasoning things until I started going to culinary school, and every time I would bring my dish up, my chef would say, not enough salt. It's like, all right, so salt is not adding flavor. Salt is used to bring out natural flavors of the food that you're already cooking. So if you're thinking that you're adding, you're adding a different flavor to your food, you're not. You're just enhancing what you're already making. Okay, back to the onions. I swear I'm gonna get better at this ring light situation. So this is what you're looking for. You can see, slightly caramelized, definitely translucent, and they're definitely releasing their flavors. So I'm actually gonna pop this right into the bowl. I don't even need this spoon. Right into the bowl with our ground beef. And we could just dump it right in. And that's it. That's like the easiest, it's the hardest thing you're gonna do right now. I'm gonna turn this off. And now we have everything in here. I'm gonna bring this back to the workstation and we're gonna stuff them, and then we're gonna plop them right back in the pot. Okay, just a little FYI, I'm giving up on the tripod. The phone has fallen in the meat mixture twice since I've seen you guys, so it's now propped up against something regular in my kitchen. Great. In this bowl, we have the onions, the meat. Now everything is also seasoned. We have our rice, 2 cups of rice. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a little bit at a time. Kind of want the rice not to be like, you know, piping hot, but I mean, obviously this is still warm, but it's okay. I'm just gonna mix this together. There's no right or wrong way to do this. There's no right or wrong combination of like ratio of meat into rice. I like about 50-50. Obviously maybe a little bit more meat than rice. The rice is just kind of like a fluffer ingredient. It's adding more substance and it's stretching this mixture. So you're not spending more money on the meat. It's kind of it's balancing it out, which kind of makes this such a great, cheap meal. This seems good. Maybe one more scoop. Now, you want to add these in gradually because obviously if you dump it all in, it's going to be a pain to start picking out rice kernels from your meat mixture. So I think it's best to just add 1 scoop at a time. This looks good. Okay, I'm going to add my parsley, all of it. And at the end of this video, I'll do a slide that has quantities. The thing about me is that I never really measure anything, but I know for you guys to make this at home, it's kind of important. So I'll do the quantities and the recipe at the end so you guys have it. And now we're gonna add my favorite part, the cheese. It's a lot of cheese. I'm gonna add more because I don't think that's enough. You also, so I added salt and pepper to the onions and then salt and pepper to the ground beef. Now, because cheese is quite salty and there is a significant, I'm gonna say it's about a cup of cheese, of grated cheese. Don't use, I mean, I guess you could use the stuff that comes out of the green shaker. I mean, to me, that's not really real, but if you guys have that, I mean, it works. It does the same thing. Okay, perfect. Now, if you wanted to test this kind of like a meatball, you could make a little patty and fry it in like in a nonstick just to get the taste, but I don't think that's necessary. But if you guys are nervous, I don't eat the raw meat, but you can make a little tester patty in a pan if you want to. This looks perfect. Okay, now see, I have about, I don't know, a cup of rice, maybe like a half a cup of rice left, and I'll plop that in a soup or something later on in the week. Now, all of your little soldiers have their hats on them, so what we're gonna do is I'm going, you know what? I'm gonna get, I think, a smaller spoon. And you're just gonna fill them up. Okay, now we're at the stove. You know how, now see, like some of the peppers, like the little stem came off. It's fine, it doesn't matter. So I have my 8 peppers. And what I'm going to do is this is so easy, watch this. I'm just going to pour the tomato sauce or tomato puree right over and around the peppers. You kind of want this to be about, I don't know, 1/4 of the way up. Now, like I said, this is like extra thick and concentrated it is. All I did is I filled the can like halfway through with water, and we're just gonna kind of water this down just a tiny bit so it stretches it again. No need to go out and get more. This seems to be the perfect amount. About, depends on your pepper, let's just say 1/3 of the way up. And then that's it. I'm gonna do the same to this one. And I'm gonna plop the lid on them. And then I'm gonna have them cook for about 45 minutes and on simmer, on low. You really don't wanna put this up too high, maybe medium low, the highest. And this will let the inside cook. You really just want the ground beef to cook through because the rice is already cooked and the peppers you could really eat raw. But I think it takes about 45 minutes to an hour on low. Just check on them every now and then. And once mine are cooked, I will come back and we'll plate it up. Just wanted to give an update on the peppers. They're pretty much almost done. This is the amount of the simmer that you want to see. You can see that it's cooked. The tomato sauce is cooked down a little bit. It's on a low simmer. And if you kind of pop one of these tops off a little bit, you can see that the beef is pretty much all the way cooked through. I also like to take the tip of my knife and just kind of do a prick test and see how it goes in and out of the pepper super easily. This pretty much means that the pepper is cooked and that the beef should be cooked through as well. Let's see these other beauties. Oh my gosh, it smells so good in here. I'm really just gonna kind of keep this in the pot. It's kind of like Sunday sauce when you keep the meatballs in the pot pretty much all day. I'm gonna make this super duper low. I'm gonna keep this in the pot for a little bit longer, and then maybe in like 20 minutes or so, I'll package it up and it'll be ready to go. So the peppers are cooking for about an hour. I pricked them. The pepper itself was super tender. The sauce was really reduced, and I can see that the ground beef was all cooked through. And I like to put in kind of like a shallow bowl, and you want to make sure that you put a little bit of the sauce on the bottom and you sprinkle it with your pecorino cheese on top. And then I just like to serve this. I wrapped up some bread because I'm going to be freezing some of it, and then some of it I'm going to be giving to my sister. So I just like to warm some bread up in the oven, and then I like to just hack at it. Open it up, dip the bread in there. It's so good and comforting. I hope you guys like this recipe. Let me know if you want me to keep posting more, or if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and I'll see you guys soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.